"Get out of this seat. You don't belong here." That was the first thing I heard on my 70th birthday. Not a happy birthday, not even a polite smile, just Ashley's sharp voice echoing across Miller's Steakhouse. The balloons swayed above the table. The cake with my name in blue frosting sat untouched, but suddenly the whole room felt colder. My daughter-in-law shoved her chair back and glared at me like I was a stranger. "This table is for family Margaret. Take your plate and sit somewhere else." I felt the eyes of strangers in nearby booths burning into me. My son stared into his glass of bourbon, silent. My sister hissed, "Just go, Margaret, don't make a scene." Even my little granddaughter looked at me with confused, guilty eyes. My throat tightened. After decades of raising them, cooking their dinners, babysitting their children now, I was an outsider at my own birthday. I grabbed my purse, my hands trembling, ready to leave quietly to let their laughter ring in my ears all the way home. But then my phone buzzed. A single text lit up the screen. "Don't leave. Watch what happens next." My stomach flipped. Who knew what was happening right now? Who was watching me? I froze at the restaurant doorway. Behind me, they smirked, whispering, certain they'd broken me. But something in that message made me stop, made me wait. They thought I'd walk away humiliated. They thought they'd won. In just minutes, their laughter would choke in their throats. And before the candles on that cake stopped burning, every one of them would be on their knees. So tell me, if it were you, would you have walked out or stayed? My name is Margaret Williams. For most of my life, people called me Mrs. W., the patient woman who taught third grade at Jefferson Elementary for nearly 4 decades. I wasn't rich, I wasn't glamorous, but I was steady. I showed up every morning, rain or shine, chalk dust on my skirt, thermos of coffee in hand. I raised my son Daniel mostly alone after his father passed away 10 years ago. I cooked, cleaned, and even babysat his children when he and Ashley were too busy with work or their vacations. I thought love and loyalty were enough to hold a family together, but love, it seems, isn't worth much when people smell money. The truth is, after my husband died, I inherited the house, an old colonial-style home in Cleveland with creaking stairs and rose bushes he planted by hand. It wasn't a mansion, but it was the last piece of him I had left. For me, it was priceless. For Daniel and Ashley, it was nothing but a future asset. They looked at the bricks, the land, the value, not the memories carved into the walls. At first, the signs were small. Ashley would sigh every time I asked for help fixing something in the house. Daniel would mention downsizing in casual conversations. They pushed me to move into a retirement community, saying it would be easier for everyone. But the truth slipped out in arguments late at night. I overheard Ashley hissing, if she just signs the deed, we could sell and pay off the mortgage. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself families argue. I told myself they were stressed. I swallowed every cutting remark, every cold look across the dinner table. Until today. On this birthday, my 70th, they didn't even bother to hide their contempt. Ashley's voice wasn't a whisper. It was a declaration in front of strangers. And Daniel, my own son, sat there, letting it happen. The same boy I worked double shifts for scrubbing bedpans at the nursing home so he could go to college. The same boy who once cried into my lap when kids bullied him in middle school. The same boy I defended with every ounce of my being. Now he defended her by staying silent. It was as if the floor beneath me cracked wide open. For a second, I wasn't Margaret the mother or Margaret the teacher. I was just a burden, a problem to be erased. I clutched my purse tighter, my knuckles white against the leather strap. The weight of humiliation pressed down on me thicker than the Ohio humidity outside. My birthday candles flickered behind me, ignored wax dripping into the frosting, like tiny funerals for each year of my life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my hands on the table and remind them who raised them, who held this family together. But the room had gone silent, except for the whisper of strangers at nearby tables. I could hear one of them mutter, "How could they do that to her?" And in that moment, shame and fury twisted together inside me. But the text message was still glowing in my bag, a lifeline I hadn't expected. And it reminded me of one thing: maybe I wasn't as powerless as they thought. I should have known the birthday dinner wasn't about me. The decorations, the cake, even the forced smiles, they were nothing more than a stage set for what Daniel and Ashley really wanted. It started after the plates were cleared and the waitress set down the check. Ashley pulled out a slim leather folder, the kind lawyers use, and placed it neatly on the table in front of me. She tapped it with her perfectly manicured nail each tap, like the ticking of a clock. "Mother," she said sweetly, "the kind of fake sweetness that drips poison, we thought today would be the perfect time to take care of some paperwork." Daniel didn't look at me. He just adjusted his tie, his jaw tight. My stomach churned. I opened the folder and stared down at the thick stack of papers. Legal stamps, blue tabs where signatures were needed. The words swam before my eyes: property transfer, deed of ownership. My heart sank. It wasn't a birthday card. It was a contract. They wanted the house. Ashley leaned closer, lowering her voice, but making sure the whole table could still hear. "You'll still live there, of course. Nothing will change. This is just practical. It ensures the house stays in the family. Think of it as a gift to us from you." Her hand slid a pen across the table, the silver tip glinting under the restaurant lights. "Go ahead, Mom," Daniel murmured finally, meeting my eyes. But there was no warmth there, only pressure, only expectation. I felt the walls close in. The chatter of the restaurant faded until all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. This wasn't just about paperwork. This was about erasing me, about stripping away the last piece of dignity I had left. My sister cleared her throat nervously, whispering, "Just sign it, Margaret. It's easier this way." Easier for whom? For the ones who couldn't wait for me to die. I looked down at the pen in my hand. My fingers trembled so violently I could barely hold it. My whole life, 40 years of marriage, decades of hard work, every memory with my late husband reduced to a line at the bottom of a page. Ashley smiled wider, thinking she'd already won. Once this is done, we can finally celebrate. Celebrate. As if betrayal could be dressed up with balloons and frosting. A lump rose in my throat. I wanted to shout, to tear the papers apart, to tell the entire restaurant what they were doing. But then I caught sight of my granddaughter peeking at me from behind her slice of cake, her tiny lips whispering, "Grandma, don't." Her eyes, so innocent, so full of confusion, stabbed deeper than Ashley's cruelty. I swallowed hard and set the pen down. For a long moment, I simply stared at the folder, the signatures they demanded, the trap they had so carefully built. And then from deep inside my purse, my phone buzzed again. One new message. 4 words that made my breath catch. They have no idea. I sat there, frozen, the pen still resting on the table, my pulse drumming so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Ashley's smile faltered for the briefest second, and I realized she hated silence more than she hated me. Well, she pressed her voice sharp now, cutting through the hushed air of the restaurant. "Sign it, Margaret. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice, trying to sound reasonable. "Mom, you're 70 now. You shouldn't have to worry about bills or maintenance. This way Ashley and I can take care of everything. All you have to do is trust us." Trust. The word felt like a blade. Trust after the cold shoulders, the whispered arguments, the way they had mocked me when they thought I couldn't hear. I thought of the nights I stayed up grading papers until 2 in the morning, only to wake up at 5 to pack Daniel's lunch for school. I thought of the money I hid away in coffee cans just to afford his textbooks. I thought of the promise I made to my dying husband that I'd protect what we built, our home, our legacy. And here they were, trying to snatch it from my hands like vultures, circling before the body is even cold. The restaurant had gone painfully quiet. Even the waitress, clutching her notepad, lingered near the drink station, pretending to polish glasses just to watch. Strangers' eyes darted between me and the folder as if they were witnesses to a crime. I pushed the papers back across the table. My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. "I will not sign this." Ashley's face twisted into a sneer. "Don't be dramatic. You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone here can see you're confused. Old age does that. We're only trying to help." Her words stung like acid. Old, confused, a burden. That's what she thought of me. That's what she wanted everyone to believe. Daniel sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Mom, don't do this. You'll regret it." But for the first time that night, I saw fear in his eyes. Just a flicker, but it was there. He was worried. Not about me, but about losing something he thought he already owned. I straightened my back, clutching my purse to my chest. My fingers brushed against my phone, still buzzing faintly with that mysterious message. They have no idea. No idea of what? No idea that I wasn't as weak as they thought. No idea that there were truths hidden deeper than this stack of papers. My heart pounded, not just with anger, but with something sharper resolve. I stood my chair, scraping loudly against the wooden floor. Heads turned. Gasps rippled through the room. Ashley hissed. "Sit down!" Daniel grabbed for my arm, but I pulled free. I looked at them both, my voice steady this time, my words slicing through the silence. "You may have planned this dinner as my humiliation, but you'll soon realize it's your own undoing." For a moment, no one moved. The air was electric, the whole restaurant holding its breath. And in that fragile silence, I knew this was only the beginning. The night after that disastrous birthday dinner, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my old recliner by the front window of the house my husband built with his own hands, the same house Ashley and Daniel wanted to rip away from me. The streetlight outside flickered, casting long shadows across the living room where photos of birthdays, graduations, and Christmas mornings lined the shelves. I stared at those frames, my son's gap-toothed smile at age 7, my husband's arm wrapped proudly around me at our 25th anniversary, and I wondered, had it all really come to this? Had love and memory been reduced to property lines and inheritance greed around midnight? I remembered the letter. It had arrived weeks earlier, tucked in a plain envelope with the handwriting of our old family lawyer, Mr. Keller. I hadn't opened it right away. In truth, I was afraid. After my husband died, I didn't think there was anything left to surprise me. But now, as the bitterness of Ashley's words still stung my ears, I slid my finger under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, my husband's handwriting scrawled across the top. My breath caught. "Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But it also means you'll soon face something I feared. Don't sign anything. Don't give in to pressure. When the time comes, you'll understand. What I left behind is more than a house. It's a shield for you and for the truth. Trust Keller. Trust yourself." Tears blurred the ink, but his words seared into me. A shield more than a house. I folded the letter carefully, clutching it to my chest as though I could feel his heartbeat through the paper. The next morning, I called Keller's office. His secretary, a young woman named Lacey, answered. "Mrs. Williams, Mr. Keller said you might be in touch." He left instructions. Within an hour, I was seated in Keller's dusty office downtown, the smell of old books and leather thick in the air. He looked older than I remembered, his gray hair thinning, but his eyes were sharp. "Margaret," he said, sliding a folder toward me, "your husband didn't want to alarm you, but he anticipated what might happen. He saw how Ashley treated you. He feared Daniel would bend to her. So he prepared contingencies." My pulse quickened. "Contingencies," Keller opened the folder, revealing documents stamped with seals and signatures. "Your husband moved the majority of his assets, investments, savings, even part of the house, into a trust. Not just any trust. One that cannot be touched by anyone who has acted in bad faith toward you. You hold the key, Margaret. You decide who is worthy." I sat there stunned, the weight of his words pressing down heavier than any insult Ashley had hurled at me. All this time, they thought I was powerless. They thought the house was the only prize. But there was more, so much more. Keller leaned back, his voice steady. "He wanted you to know that your silence, your patience, it wasn't weakness, it was preparation. He trusted you to see through them. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something bloom inside me that wasn't sorrow or anger. It was strength. Quiet, simmering strength. I left the office with the documents clutched under my arm, the afternoon sun warming my face. People bustled past me on the Cleveland sidewalks, unaware that my life had just shifted. For so long, I had carried the weight of being the burden. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't the weak link in the chain. I was the lock. and I held the only key. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. As I carried that folder home, the sun on my shoulders, I felt taller somehow, like I wasn't just an aging widow everyone could push aside. I was the keeper of something they could never imagine. That night, I laid the papers out across my dining room table. The trust documents, the letter from my husband Keller's handwritten notes. Every page whispered one thing: you are not powerless. I traced my husband's signature with my fingertip, remembering his steady hand the way he used to write grocery lists as if each word mattered. Tears welled again, but this time they weren't from grief, they were from gratitude. He had seen what I couldn't, or maybe what I refused to admit. He knew Ashley's ambition, Daniel's weakness. He had left me more than protection. He had left me a choice. Still, a knot of fear twisted in my stomach. What would I do with this? Should I reveal it now? End the charade, show them I wasn't theirs to control? Or should I wait? Let them dig their own graves with their arrogance. I thought about Ashley's sneer at the restaurant the way Daniel couldn't even meet my eyes. The silence of my own family as they let me be humiliated. No, I wouldn't waste this. If they wanted to treat me like a pawn, I would show them I was the queen. The days that followed, I played the part. I answered Ashley's calls with trembling politeness. I let Daniel talk about long-term plans as if I didn't know the truth. At family dinners, I smiled faintly even when Ashley poured me wine with that smug little smirk. But beneath the table, my fingers brushed the edge of the envelope tucked in my purse, a reminder that the real game hadn't even begun. I also began to notice things I'd missed before. The way Ashley's eyes darted to the silver picture frames in my living room, calculating their worth. The way Daniel asked about maintenance costs, his voice casual, but his fingers tapping impatiently. Even my sister Ruth seemed uneasy, hinting that maybe it's best to let them handle things. They thought they were clever. They thought they'd worn me down. But each word, each glance only hardened my resolve. One evening, as I folded laundry in the quiet of my bedroom, my granddaughter slipped in. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom says you're too old to keep the house. But I don't want you to leave. I like it here." Her little voice nearly broke me. I hugged her tight, inhaling the scent of bubblegum shampoo. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I murmured, kissing her hair. "This house isn't going anywhere." Her eyes widened. "Promise." I looked down at her, and for the first time my answer didn't waver. "Promise." After she left, I stood by the window, watching the roses my husband had planted sway gently in the night breeze. They'd bloomed late this year, stubborn and strong, just like him, just like me. The next family gathering was already on the calendar, another dinner at their house, another chance for Ashley to corner me, to wave her pen and papers in my face. But this time, I wouldn't be caught off guard. I slid the trust documents into a new envelope, sealed it, and placed it in my handbag. My husband's letter I kept folded close to my heart. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see a frail widow anymore. I saw someone who had endured humiliation, betrayal, and loss, and still stood tall. They had no idea what was coming, and I intended to keep it that way until the perfect moment. The next family dinner was supposed to be casual. At least that's what Ashley told me on the phone. Nothing fancy. She said, her voice honey-sweet but edged with something sharper. Just a small gathering at our place. We want to spend more time together, especially after your birthday. Unpleasantness. Unpleasantness. That's what she called humiliating me in front of strangers. I didn't argue. I just agreed, my voice soft, my heart steady. Because this time, I wasn't walking in blind. When I arrived at their suburban home, the driveway was already lined with cars. Daniel's SUV, Ashley's new Lexus, even Ruth's old minivan. Inside the dining table gleamed with polished silverware and wine glasses that sparkled like weapons. The smell of roast beef and garlic potatoes filled the air, warm and comforting, but it couldn't mask the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Ashley greeted me at the door, all smiles, her lipstick a shade too bright, her perfume heavy. She kissed my cheek like she hadn't spat venom at me only days ago. "Margaret, you look lovely," she purred, taking my coat before I could refuse. Daniel appeared behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. He didn't hug me. He didn't even try. His eyes flickered to my handbag as though he expected me to carry the deed to the house inside it. Dinner began pleasantly enough small talk about work, the kids, the weather, but the air was thick with unspoken words, with expectation. My granddaughter giggled as she told me about school, her laughter the only genuine sound at that table. For her sake, I forced myself to smile. But halfway through the meal, I saw Ashley's eyes signal Daniel. The moment had come. He cleared his throat, setting down his fork with a deliberate clink. Mom, he began, Ashley, and I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what's best for everyone. Everyone. That word again used like a shield to hide selfishness. Ashley leaned forward, her manicured hands folded neatly on the table. You know we only want what's best for you, Margaret. You shouldn't be worrying about bills or property taxes at your age. We can take care of all that if you'll just let us. Her voice was silk, but her eyes were steel. Daniel reached beneath the table and pulled out another folder, thicker this time, heavier. He placed it in front of me with a thud that made the silverware rattle. Mom, it's time to make things official. Just sign these documents tonight and you won't have to worry about anything ever again. My pulse quickened, but outwardly I remained calm. I let my fingers brush the edge of the folder, but I didn't open it. Instead, I looked around the table. My sister Ruth avoided my gaze. My niece stared at her plate. Even my grandson shifted uncomfortably. Ashley couldn't hide her impatience. She nudged the pen toward me. Come on, Margaret. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's just a formality. Sign, and we can move forward as a family. I swallowed hard, forcing my hands to stay steady. Inside, rage and sorrow collided, but I also felt something else control, because I knew what they didn't. I opened the folder, slowly scanning the pages. Legal jargon, transfer of ownership signatures required. It was all there, plain as day. They wanted everything, not just the house savings assets, even my late husband's pension. My voice trembled at first, but I steadied it. This is a lot to sign, don't you think? Ashley's smile widened, though her eyes narrowed. It's just paperwork, nothing more. You don't need to worry about the details. Daniel's voice hardened. Mom, please. Don't fight us on this. We're trying to protect you. Protect me. That was the lie they clung to, the mask they wore to hide their greed. I closed the folder and looked Daniel straight in the eye. For the first time, I saw not my son, but a man who had lost himself, who had let greed carve away the boy I once knew. I don't think I'm ready to sign this tonight, I said softly. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Ashley's jaw clenched. Daniel's hand tightened around his wine glass until I feared it would shatter. Ruth shifted in her chair, whispering, Margaret, maybe it's for the best. Don't drag this out. I turned to her, my voice low but sharp. For the best. For who? Ashley slammed her hand on the table, startling the children. Enough of this. You're being stubborn, Margaret. Selfish. Don't you see? You're standing in the way of your own family's future. I felt every eye in the room on me pressing, demanding. The humiliation from the restaurant came rushing back, sharper than ever. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't alone. Because in my bag, hidden beneath my folded handkerchief, lay the documents from Keller. The trust, the proof, the weapon my husband had left me. My fingers twitched toward the purse, but I stopped myself. Not yet. Timing was everything. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly in my lap. My voice was quiet, but it carried through the room. You've all made your intentions very clear. But before I sign anything, I think it's only fair I tell you something. Something your father, Daniel, your father wanted you to know. Gasps flickered around the table. Ashley's smile faltered. Daniel's brow furrowed. I let the silence stretch, let their nerves twist tighter and tighter. Then I added, almost in a whisper, he saw this coming, every bit of it, and he made sure you'd never succeed. The room erupted questions, protests, Ashley's voice shrill with panic. But I stayed still, my heart steady now, my husband's words echoing in my mind. Don't sign anything, trust yourself. And for the first time, I was ready to fight. The uproar around the table rose like a storm. Ashley's shrill voice slicing through the clatter of forks and gasps, Daniel snapping at me to stop playing games, Ruth muttering that I was embarrassing everyone. The children sat wide-eyed, frozen in their seats, watching the cracks tear open in the family they thought was solid. But I wasn't rattled. Not anymore. I waited. Let the noise rise, crest and collapse on itself until the only sound was Ashley's labored breathing and the nervous tapping of Daniel's fingers on the table. Then slowly, deliberately, I reached into my purse. Every eye followed my hand. I pulled out the envelope, thick, crisp, sealed with Keller's stamp, and laid it on the table with a soft thud. It looked harmless, ordinary. But in that moment, it might as well have been dynamite. "What's that?" Ashley demanded, her voice faltering. I slid it toward the center of the table. "This," I said evenly, "is the truth your father left behind, the truth you've been so desperate to erase." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? Dad's will was read years ago." I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving his. Not everything was read. Not everything needed to be until now. With trembling fingers, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment, I opened the envelope and spread the documents across the table. The trust papers gleamed under the chandelier's light signatures, bold seals, unbroken. Ashley snatched one up, scanning the words, her face draining of color. This can't be right." Keller's careful handwriting filled the margins. Legal phrases spelled it out clearly, the assets, the savings, the house, even investments they never knew existed, all were placed in a trust managed by me. And the conditions were clear: anyone who disrespected or mistreated me would forfeit their claim. Daniel's voice cracked as he read the lines aloud. This gives you full authority, total control." I nodded. "Yes, Daniel, your father trusted me. He didn't trust Ashley, and after tonight I'm starting to understand why." The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley's lips parted, but no words came. Ruth shifted uncomfortably, her face pale. Even the children seemed to understand something monumental had just happened. Finally, Ashley slammed the papers down. "You forged this. You're old and confused. Everyone knows you can't manage something like this." Her words hit me like stones, but I was ready. I reached again into the envelope and drew out a smaller sheet, a letter in my husband's handwriting. I unfolded it slowly, the creases worn from nights I'd read it alone. "Recognize this?" I asked, holding it up. Daniel blinked, his voice barely a whisper. "That's Dad's handwriting." I began to read aloud, my voice steady, filling every corner of the room. "If you are reading this, Margaret, it means I am gone. But it also means those around you may try to force your hand. Do not sign anything. Do not surrender what we built. Everything I leave is under your care, and only you can decide who is worthy. If they treat you with cruelty, they will inherit nothing. If they treat you with respect, you may choose to share. The power is yours." I lowered the letter, letting the words linger in the air. My husband's voice, his wisdom, his love, it was all there, undeniable. Daniel's eyes shimmered with something I hadn't seen in years: shame. Ashley, however, looked ready to explode. "You're lying!" she screeched, rising from her chair. "He never would have cut me out. He knew I was the one holding this family together. I stood the weight of decades behind me, and my voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. You hold nothing together, Ashley. You break, you belittle, you poison. Your mask has slipped tonight, and now everyone sees it." Gasps rippled through the room. My niece covered her mouth. Ruth shook her head, whispering, "Oh my God." Daniel finally spoke, his voice ragged. "Ashley, did you know about this?" She spun toward him, desperate. "Don't you dare take her side. This is all manipulation. She's making it up." But the letter in my hand, the ink that spelled out his father's name, silenced him. He dropped his gaze, unable to look at her. I pressed on my voice, firm. "You tried to strip me of dignity, of family, of home. But the truth is you've already lost. Not because of me, because of your own cruelty." Ashley's face twisted, her words devolving into incoherent sputters. She clawed at the documents, but Daniel caught her wrist. His voice, low and broken, stopped her cold. "Enough." The room fell silent again. For the first time, Daniel wasn't looking at me with cold detachment. He was looking at me with the eyes of the boy I once knew, the boy who had cried in my lap, who had whispered promises of always taking care of me. And in that silence, I realized the balance had shifted. I wasn't the one on trial anymore. They were. I gathered the documents back into the envelope, folded the letter carefully, and slid them into my purse. Then I straightened, meeting each gaze around the table. This dinner was meant to corner me, to force me into surrender. But tonight you've seen the truth. The house, the assets, the legacy. They are mine to protect. And from this day forward, everything will be decided on my terms, not yours. The chandelier above flickered, casting shadows across their stunned faces. I picked up my glass of water, took a slow sip, and set it back down with a calm that startled even me. Now I said, my voice almost gentle, "Shall we continue with dessert?" The words hung in the air, absurd and cutting, because everyone knew the meal was over. Something much bigger had just begun. For a long moment after my words, the room felt like it had frozen in time. No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the faint hum of the chandelier above us, its light casting fractured shadows across the polished table. Then it began. Ruth was the first to break her fork clattering against her plate. She rubbed her temples, whispering, "I knew something like this would happen. I told you not to push her." Her voice wavered between guilt and fear, as though she had just realized the side she'd chosen was crumbling beneath her feet. My niece burst into quiet tears, her young voice trembling. "Why are you all fighting? It's Grandma's house. It always has been." The innocence in her words landed like stones in the silence, heavier than any accusation. Ashley exploded. Her chair screeched backward as she shot to her feet, slamming her fists onto the table so hard the glasses rattled. "This is insane," she shouted, her face twisted with rage. "You think you can humiliate me like this, Margaret? You think a piece of paper changes the fact that this family runs because of me?" Her voice cracked with hysteria. She pointed at Daniel, her finger trembling. Tell her this doesn't change anything." But Daniel didn't answer. He just sat there staring at his hands as though they belonged to someone else. His silence enraged her further. "You spineless coward," she spat. "After everything I've done for you, for us, you're going to sit there and let her take everything away." Her words echoed through the room, sharp and venomous. But the truth was out, and no amount of screaming could shove it back into the shadows. I rose slowly, steadying myself with the back of my chair. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried with the weight of finality. "No, Ashley, I'm not taking anything away. You tried to take it from me, and now you've lost far more than you ever imagined." Ashley's face flushed crimson. She lunged for the documents, desperate, but Daniel caught her wrist again. His grip was firm, his voice a low growl. "Stop it!" She froze, stunned at the force in his tone. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I saw my son stand up, not for me, not yet, but against her. Ashley jerked her arm free, her chest heaving. "You'll regret this, Daniel. Both of you. She's manipulating us, can't you see?" Daniel's eyes lifted, finally meeting mine. They were wet, filled with shame. "Mom," his voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." My throat tightened, but I held his gaze. "You didn't want to know. That's worse." The words hit him like a slap. He bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. Whether it was anger, grief, or regret, I couldn't tell. Meanwhile, Ruth leaned forward, her hands clasped as if in prayer. "Margaret, please. You have to understand, we didn't mean for it to go this far. We thought it would be easier if you let go. Easier for who I demanded." My voice, sharper now, cut through her excuses. "For me, who would be left with nothing but a bed in some sterile home. Or for you, who'd finally have your slice of the pie. Don't lie to me, Ruth. You chose their side because you thought they'd win." Her lips trembled. She had no defense. Ashley began pacing the length of the dining room, muttering curses under her breath, her heels clicking like gunshots against the hardwood floor. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'll find a way. You can't keep it all to yourself. You can't." I watched her with a cold calm I hadn't felt in years. She looked smaller now, stripped of her power, her manipulations laid bare under the harsh light of truth. Then my granddaughter's small voice cut through the tension once more. "Mom," she whispered, tugging at Ashley's sleeve. "Why are you so mean to Grandma?" The room fell into stunned silence. Ashley froze her mouth, opening and closing, no words escaping. For the first time, her daughter had seen through her mask. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. Not now. I turned to the table, my voice steady. This isn't just about money. It's about respect, about family, about the promises we make to each other and the ones we break. I gathered the documents back into my purse, snapping it shut with a decisive click. The decision of what happens next is mine. Your father gave me that right. And tonight, you all proved exactly why he did. Ashley sank back into her chair, pale and shaking, her fury deflated into a hollow glare. Ruth stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. Daniel sat in silence, the weight of his choices pressing visibly on his shoulders. The children shifted uneasily, sensing the storm had passed, but not yet knowing what came after. I straightened, drawing in a slow, steady breath. You thought tonight would end with me broken, stripped of everything I had left. Instead, it ends with you exposed. You wanted me gone, but I'm still here, and I hold all the power. The chandelier flickered shadows dancing across their stunned faces. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider. I didn't feel like the burden. I felt like what I truly was, the matriarch, the protector, the one person in this family who still understood the meaning of loyalty. I sat back down, folded my napkin neatly in my lap, and let the silence stretch. Finally, I said, calm and sharp as a blade, "Now you may decide, do you treat me with respect or do you walk away with nothing?" No one dared to answer, and in that silence their fear spoke louder than words ever could. The storm at the dinner table had barely begun to settle when the doorbell rang. It was sharp, unexpected, slicing through the thick silence like a blade. Everyone froze. Ashley's eyes darted toward the door, suspicion written all over her face. Daniel frowned, pushing back his chair. "Who the hell I'll get it?" I said, my voice calm but deliberate. I rose, purse in hand, and walked to the door. The hardwood floor creaked beneath my steps. When I opened it, the cool night air rushed in, and there, standing beneath the porch light, was Mr. Keller. The room collectively gasped. The family lawyer in his gray suit and wire-rimmed glasses looked like a specter from another world. He tipped his hat politely. "Mrs. Williams, forgive the intrusion. But I believe tonight is the moment your husband anticipated." My heart thudded. I stepped aside, letting him in. The room went still, all eyes locked on him as he carried a weathered briefcase to the dining table. Ashley bristled instantly. "What is this? Who invited him?" "I did," I replied simply, lowering myself back into my chair. Keller placed the briefcase on the table, snapping it open with a metallic click. Inside lay another stack of documents heavier than the first, sealed with red ribbons. He glanced at me, then at Daniel. "Your father left instructions that should tonight unfold as expected, these were to be revealed." Daniel swallowed hard. "Instructions." Ashley rolled her eyes, scoffing. "This is ridiculous. More theatrics. She's putting on a show." Keller ignored her, sliding the top document free. His voice was crisp, professional. "Your father created a conditional trust. What you saw earlier was only the first layer. The second stipulates that any heir who shows contempt, disrespect, or coercion toward Margaret Williams, his wife of 45 years, shall be fully disinherited." The words dropped like a bomb. Ashley's mouth opened, then shut again, her complexion paling. Ruth muttered something under her breath, her hands trembling in her lap. Daniel sat rigid, his face blank. Keller continued, his tone unflinching. "Your father wrote this in no uncertain terms. I will not reward cruelty. If my wife is treated as less than the cornerstone of this family, those responsible will receive nothing, not even a cent." Gasps erupted. Ashley's hand flew to her chest. This is insane. You can't enforce something like that." Keller adjusted his glasses, his expression cool. "It's already in motion, Mrs. Collins. The trust is ironclad. Your actions, your words, they've been witnessed." Ashley's voice cracked. Witnessed by who? I let the silence stretch before answering, my voice quiet but deadly sharp. By everyone in this room, by the strangers at the restaurant, and by the man who knew you better than you ever realized. Ashley's lips trembled. She turned to Daniel, desperate. "Say something, do something. Don't let her steal everything from us." But Daniel's eyes were locked on Keller. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched, but there was no fight left in him. Not against the law, not against his father's hand reaching from the grave. Keller slid another page forward, tapping it lightly. "There's more. Your father also wrote a personal note sealed not to be opened until tonight." He looked at me. "Would you like me to read it, Mrs. Williams?" My chest tightened. I nodded. Keller broke the seal, unfolded the letter, and read aloud, "To my family. If you are hearing this, then my greatest fear has come true, that greed has overshadowed love. Margaret has given everything for this family. If you cannot honor her, then you do not deserve to inherit what we built. To my son, Daniel, remember who raised you. If you let Ashley's ambition blind you, you will lose far more than money. To Ashley, if cruelty is your legacy, you will be left with nothing. And to Margaret, you are not alone. Stand tall. This family bends to you, not the other way around." The room fell silent again, the letter's final words hanging heavy in the air. Ashley looked like she might collapse, her face twisted, fury and fear mingling until she was unrecognizable. Ruth buried her face in her hands, whispering prayers under her breath. Daniel's eyes glistened, shame written across every line of his face. And me, for the first time in years, I felt my husband's presence, not as a memory, but as a shield standing right beside me. I folded my hands neatly on the table, my voice steady as I spoke. "Well, now you know. Everything you tried to take from me was never yours to claim." Ashley shook her head violently, whispering, "No, this can't be happening." But it was. And it was only the beginning. Keller wasn't finished. His eyes sharp behind his glasses scanned the room. "There's one final item," he said quietly. From the briefcase, he withdrew a small black flash drive and set it gently on the table. "Your husband left a video message. He asked that it only be played if his family ever tried to force Margaret's hand." The air grew heavier. The only sound was the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Ashley's face drained of color. A video, what? What could he possibly say? Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line, his knuckles whitening around his wine glass. Ruth whispered a prayer, crossing herself. My heart pounded, but I nodded to Keller. "Play it." He pulled a slim laptop from his case, connected the drive, and with a few keystrokes the screen lit up. And there he was, my husband. He sat at his desk, the one in his study, where he used to pay bills and write letters. His hair was grayer than I remembered, his face thinner, but his eyes, those steady, kind eyes, were the same. When he spoke, the room stilled. "If you're watching this," he began, his voice calm but firm, "it means I'm gone. And it means what I feared has come to pass. Margaret is being pressured, maybe even humiliated by the very people she gave her life to protect." Ashley flinched, but he continued unwavering. "I love this family more than anything, but I saw things I could not ignore, the whispers, the disrespect, the hunger in your eyes, when you looked at what was hers, at what was ours. So I made sure Margaret would never stand defenseless." His gaze hardened, directed straight through the screen, straight into Daniel. "Son, if you are sitting there, ask yourself, are you the man your mother raised, or are you the man your wife is shaping you into? If you have chosen cruelty, you have already lost more than you can imagine." Daniel's shoulders slumped, his eyes brimming with tears. He looked down, unable to meet the ghost of his father's stare. Then my husband's voice shifted sharper, now filled with iron. "And to you, Ashley, you thought I didn't see, but I did. Every word you spat, every sneer, every moment you tried to cut Margaret down. You may believe you've won, but the truth is your cruelty is the very thing that condemns you. You will inherit nothing, not my respect, not my trust, not a dime of what I leave behind." Ashley gasped a strangled sound as if the floor had been yanked out from under her. He can't, she stammered, but no one listened. The man on the screen leaned closer, his voice softening as he turned back to me. And to you, Margaret, my love, my partner, my anchor. Stand tall, do not bend. I trusted you with this because I knew you would not fail. You are stronger than they know. And when the moment comes, remember this family bends to you or it breaks. The video ended with a click, the screen fading to black. For a long while, no one spoke. Then Ruth broke into sobs, tears streaming down her face. He knew. He knew all along, she whispered. Daniel buried his face in his hands. His body shook, a grown man reduced to the little boy I once cradled. The boy who had lost his way, Ashley, though she erupted. This is manipulation. He's dead and he's trying to control us from the grave. This isn't fair. It's not fair. She clawed at Daniel's arm. Say something. Fight this. But Daniel pulled away, his voice hoarse. He's right, Ashley. He's right. Her scream tore through the room, raw and desperate. She slammed her fist against the table, sending glasses tumbling, red wine spilling like blood across the white tablecloth. You'll regret this, Margaret. She shrieked, her eyes wild, unhinged. I rose slowly, steadying myself, my voice calm as a blade. No, Ashley. For the first time in years, I will not be the one regretting anything. That burden now belongs to you. The room fell silent again, but the silence was different this time. Heavier. Final. Keller closed his briefcase, his task complete. The terms are clear, he said firmly. From this moment forward, the trust is untouchable. Margaret is the sole authority. There is no appeal. Ashley collapsed into her chair, her rage dissolving into hollow sobs. Ruth dabbed her eyes with a napkin, whispering apologies under her breath. Daniel sat motionless, broken by the weight of his father's words. And me, I stood in the middle of it all, no longer the humiliated widow, no longer the burden. I was the one with power, the one with truth, the one my husband believed in even beyond the grave. The roses outside I thought would be blooming soon, stubborn, resilient, alive. I clutched the letter in my hand, my husband's words echoing through me, and for the first time in years I felt untouchable. When the lawyer left and the echoes of his footsteps faded, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The spilled wine still stained the tablecloth, the papers lay stacked neatly in my purse, and the weight of my husband's words hung like smoke in the air. For the first time that evening, I allowed myself to exhale. I looked around the table at Ruth with her downcast eyes at my grandchildren, sitting silently unsure whether to cry or to hug me at Daniel, whose shame clung to him like a shadow. And finally, at Ashley, her face streaked with tears, fury and defeat warring inside her. I rose slowly, my palms flat against the polished wood, and let my voice fill the silence. All my life, I believed love and sacrifice were enough to hold a family together. I worked 2 jobs so Daniel could go to college. I patched every hole in this house, cooked every meal, wiped every tear. I thought if I gave enough, I'd never be left empty. My throat tightened, but I pressed on. Tonight proved me wrong. Love alone isn't enough, not when it isn't returned, not when respect is missing. Family isn't built on blood or houses or money. It's built on loyalty, on decency, on the way you treat the people who gave you everything. Ruth sniffled, a sob escaping. She whispered, Margaret, I'm so sorry. I nodded, but I didn't let her words derail me. Do you know what cut deepest tonight? I asked, my eyes sweeping the table. Not Ashley's insults, not even her greed. It was Daniel's silence. My own son, who I defended from bullies, who I stayed up nights sewing costumes, for who I sacrificed my health for, sat and watched while his wife tore me down. That silence hurt more than anything. Daniel's shoulders shook, his hands covering his face. He whispered through trembling lips, Mom, I failed you. I paused, letting his words hang in the air. Then I stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. You failed yourself. You let her voice drown out the one that mattered, your own. His tears fell freely, then staining the cuff of his shirt. My heart ached, but I didn't soften. Not yet. I turned to the children, their wide eyes locked on me. You should never grow up believing it's normal to treat family like trash. You should never think cruelty is power, and you should never stay silent when someone you love is being humiliated. Their little heads bobbed their innocence, cutting deeper than any adult's apology could. Ashley opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand. Don't. You've spoken enough. Tonight your words revealed exactly who you are, and no amount of pretending can erase it. The room was quiet, every syllable hanging heavy in the air. I returned to my chair, folding my hands neatly. My voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. My husband prepared for this moment because he believed in me. He knew one day I'd have to choose. Do I let greed devour what we built, or do I stand tall and fight for it? I chose to stand. And that choice wasn't just about me. It was about showing all of you that respect cannot be negotiated. It must be earned. And once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to get back. Silence wrapped the room again. Then, almost as if carried by instinct, Ruth slid from her chair onto her knees. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please forgive me, Margaret. I was wrong." The sound of her voice cracked something in Daniel. He pushed back his chair and dropped to his knees beside her, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, I'll never forgive myself for what I let happen. Please give me another chance." Even the children shuffled closer, their tiny hands reaching for mine. And Ashley, her pride finally shattering, sank down too, though her head hung low, her apologies bitter and forced. I'm sorry," she choked out. I stared at them all, kneeling there in the glow of the chandelier, the same people who had laughed at me days earlier, who had tried to strip me of everything. And I realized the power wasn't in the money or the trust or even the house. It was in the truth. I straightened my voice, calm but unyielding. "You ask for forgiveness. Maybe one day I'll find it in my heart to give it. But forgiveness isn't words, it's change. Until I see that change, all you have are your knees and your regrets." Their silence was my answer. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel weak. I felt seen, heard, respected. And I vowed in that moment never to let that feeling go. Because respect isn't given, it's demanded. And tonight, they finally understood why. They were still on their knees when I stood my purse clutched firmly in my hand. The room smelled of cold food and spilt wine, a battlefield where no one had truly won. I looked down at them, Ruth whispering prayers, Daniel trembling with shame, Ashley choking back tears she swore she'd never shed. For a moment, I almost felt pity, almost. But then I remembered that night at the restaurant, the sting of Ashley's voice telling me I didn't belong at my own birthday table, and the silence that followed from everyone else. That memory hardened my spine. "I don't know yet," I said slowly, "whether I can forgive any of you. Forgiveness isn't free. It's earned. And so far, you've given me no reason to believe you've changed." Ashley sobbed louder, but I turned away. Daniel reached out, but I pulled back. "Not tonight," I whispered. I walked to the doorway, the envelope heavy in my bag, my husband's words echoing in my ears. "Stand tall. This family bends to you or it breaks." Behind me, the sound of kneeling bodies, shifting whispers of desperation, pleas for another chance. But I didn't turn around. Because in that moment, a new question burned in my mind, one that even I didn't have the answer to. What would I do now? Would I strip them all of their inheritance, leave them to taste the bitterness of betrayal they once fed me? Or would I find it in my heart to grant mercy and risk being humiliated again? As I closed the door behind me, the house fell into silence. The decision was mine alone, and I wasn't ready to make it yet. So that was my story, a birthday dinner meant to humiliate me. That ended with my entire family on their knees, and now the choice is mine. But I want to ask you, what would you have done? Would you forgive them, open the door to reconciliation, and risk being hurt again? Or would you protect what's yours and let them live with the consequences of their greed? This isn't just my question. It's one that so many of us face in different ways. Families betray. Trust is broken. Sometimes the people closest to us cut the deepest wounds. And in moments like that, we're left wondering, do we hold on to love, or do we protect ourselves at all costs? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your honest feelings in the comments below. Tell me, have you ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust? Did you forgive, or did you walk away? And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of something in your own life, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, a sibling, maybe even a grandchild. Let them see the importance of respect, loyalty, and the truth about what family should really mean. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next story, because trust me, there are more twists coming. Click that notification bell, leave a like, and join this community where stories like these remind us we're never alone. After all, sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the darkest moments. So tell me, if your family knelt before you, begging for forgiveness, what would you do?